Hello and welcome to On Point. I'm Vanessa Garcia. With the continuing effort to combat the Delta variant, Los Angeles City Council is considering a law that will mandate residents to show proof of vaccination in some public places. City officials are still finalizing the rules. But if enacted, you'll likely have to show your vaccine card when entering indoor establishments like restaurants, gyms, theaters, and live events. The proposed rules would apply within LA city limits, though City Attorney Mike Ferrer has called for a similar policy to take effect countywide. He believes it will incentivize reluctant residents to get vaccinated. Several individual businesses in the county are already asking customers for proof of vaccination, such as this restaurant in Santa Monica, Birdie G's. Later today, we will visit the establishment and ask how they've been maintaining the requirement. Not all city officials believe it will help motivate people to receive a COVID shot. Councilmember John Lee says that the mandate could actually have an opposite effect. He has said the proposal will hurt businesses and erode public trust. So, if LA enacts a mandatory vaccination ordinance, will customers embrace it? And will the public health benefits outweigh the potential difficulties of enforcing it? On Point's Alana Martinez has more.
Thanks, Vanessa. Join us today. We have Anthony Zaller from Zaller Law Group and Stuart Waldman from a Southern California advocacy agency called Valley Industry and Commerce Association. Welcome, Stuart and Anthony.
Hello.
To start off, Anthony, I wanted to ask you, this is a fairly new requirement that restaurants have for customers to show proof of vaccination. Have you had any cases relating to this yet? And if you have, what were the basis of them?
Yeah, no, we haven't seen any litigation here in Los Angeles based under this new ordinance. It's relatively new, been, basically less than a week. And a lot of the measures don't go into effect here until October and November. So we haven't seen any litigation as of yet over it, but we're getting a lot of questions from employers on how to comply with these vaccine mandates on the federal, state, and local levels. And if the employer is, currently they're not required to mandate the vaccinations for the employees, but some employers are opting to go that route right now and require their employees to receive the vaccine, which they can do voluntarily. And the sticky issue there is how to address any reasonable accommodation requests by the employees for either a medical exemption, if they have a medical issue that prevents them from getting the vaccine, or if they have a sincerely held religious belief that prevents them from getting the vaccine.
Do you think businesses should worry about getting sued over this ordinance when it does take place?
Yes, obviously, once it becomes law, it's something employers need to comply with, but it puts them in a tricky position. They're facing a lawsuit from the city under enforcement of this mandate, or the county. We have the LA County. The city hasn't passed anything yet. LA City hasn't passed anything yet, to my knowledge. So we're looking at the county ordinance. And so you've got potential exposure from the county, but then on the flip side, you've got exposure from the employees. And if the employee is asking for a reasonable accommodation and the employer does not provide that reasonable accommodation, there could be a civil lawsuit by those employees to protect their employment rights.
You had mentioned earlier about religious and medical exemptions. I want to ask both of you, but I'll start with you, Stuart. Should the ordinance include medical or religious exemptions?
Well, I think you have to, but a reasonable accommodation for an employee means different things. And so let's say the LA County ordinance applies to right now bars, breweries, wineries, and nightclubs. So let's say you have a hostess or a host who who wants the exemption. Well, that is a front-facing job that, while you don't necessarily have to force that person to be vaccinated, if that is your policy, but you can't also have them being the front-facing job. You can't have them be the one who's who's greeting employees. So you have to accommodate them and put them somewhere else. I know that that's troubling for a lot of folks, but these measures are there to keep people safe, and it's problematic.
Anthony, do you think it'll be problematic in enforcing people that claim to have a religious or medical exemption?
That's the tricky issue for employers, and that's where employers need to be careful. And the medical exemption is relatively easy. The employee can show up with a note from their doctor saying, look, because of my medical condition, my doctor is stating in this note that I'm not eligible to receive the vaccine. And the employer can keep that doctor's note in the file and keep it confidential. There's some privacy issues there, but relatively easy to document and have a doctor verify that that's the issue with the employee. Where it becomes more difficult is under this sincerely held religious belief accommodation request, when the employee says, because of my religious beliefs, I can't be vaccinated. Now, the question is for the employer, how do you verify that? Can you verify it? Do you get a note? Who do you get the note from? What if it just gets tricky very quickly? And what if you question the religious belief? Can you question it? So I urge employers to approach that issue very carefully with the help of an attorney, and deal with that specifically. And then I think the other issue too is, what do you do? As Stuart raised a good issue, what do you do when an employee raises one of these reasonable accommodation requests? It's going to look different for every restaurant, every employer, every type of position. And the employer needs to think this through though early and start thinking about it, even if this mandate doesn't apply to them right now. We're seeing on the federal level, President Biden said that OSHA will be coming out with a mandate for large employers, if you have more than 100 employees on the federal level, to have your employees vaccinated or get tested weekly. So all employers should be thinking this through if it becomes the norm. And how are they going to accommodate these requests? What documentation are they going to receive from the employees? And also, who within the company is going to have access to this confidential medical information, and what steps are going to take to protect the employees' privacy rights as well?
But the employer doesn't have to accommodate. As long as the employer has a policy that everyone has to be vaccinated, then that is a condition of employment. But they have to go through the rules. They have to make sure the employees know, and they have to have a written policy as part of their handbook. And then they can unfortunately terminate people who don't choose to get vaccinated.
Well, with a caveat to that, they have to provide a reasonable accommodation for the medical issue and the sincerely held religious belief. So they have to engage the employee and work out a reasonable accommodation on that if it's available.
Right, but we're talking breweries, nightclubs, wineries, bars. So I'm not sure what reasonable accommodation there can be for most folks, but yes.
It's a tricky situation. I spoke with Christopher Rogers. He's a professor here who teaches public health and epidemiology classes. Here is what he had to say about how proof of the vaccination is slowing the spread of COVID.
So requiring proof of vaccination really helps to incentivize vaccinations, and the byproduct of that is slowing the spread of disease. So vaccinations help to reduce the spread by both stopping the infection, as well as, if the infection does occur, by helping our body to defend against the infection more quickly and more effectively. So the more vaccinated individuals there are in the community, the less likely the infection will spread. So requiring vaccinations for schools or to enter bars really just puts pressures on individuals, and eventually it becomes easier just to get the vaccine than it is to not have it. And really, this is not anything too new. We've had vaccine requirements for schools and the military for a very long time. So in addition, this requirement is also about reducing the spread in places where transmission may be more likely, like in crowded places. As of now, many of the locations that are being Required to show proof of vaccinations in Los Angeles County are places where you may have people coming together, like large events, and bars or nightclubs where people may be in close proximity dancing or walking around with their masks off because they're drinking.
Clearly, it is helping the spread of, slowing down the spread of COVID, to require proof of vaccination. Stuart, I know we were just talking about religious and medical exemptions, but do you think that there's any other complications that will come with this mandate, like how they're regulating it or anything
Well,
upon that?
the biggest issue right now is inconsistency, and that's what businesses want. They want consistency. They want a decision made that makes it easy. So LA County came out with a proposal: bars, wineries, nightclubs can't have to have vaccinations, but restaurants don't. So you know, it's difficult to enforce. When you look at stadiums, outdoor stadiums. So outdoor stadiums, you can either be vaccinated or show proof of a negative test within 72 hours. Well, when you go to a stadium, they have bars that will require vaccination cards. So it just makes it difficult to prove. You know, especially a lot of small businesses, they don't have a lot of people working, and to sit there and have to check just makes it more difficult. But it's just something that needs to be done.
Anthony, there was a recent video circulating online of a customer in New York that got into a physical altercation with a hostess at a restaurant. Do you see these type of situations coming up more and more?
Yeah, as Stuart said too, I agree. You know, it puts the employers in a difficult position to verify the vaccination status. How do they do that? What proof? I was just before we got on this video, I was looking at the County of LA has published some documents on how to verify vaccination status, and it sounds easy, but then there's a lot of unknowns there. And especially if a foreign traveler comes in, they're going to have a different looking documentation. And now an employer is going to have to know how to read all these various forms of vaccination status and how to interpret it. So it's tricky. And I think you raise a good point too, you know, the enforcement, who's going to enforce this, and what's that going to look like as well. And I think, you know, on LA City has said they're looking into a mandate too. We haven't seen that come out, but I have a feeling, and I don't have any, you know, I haven't heard of this directly, but the enforcement issue for the LA City, how they're going to enforce a mandate like that is probably a big issue for them and a big question mark.
Yeah, LA City definitely plans on coming out with a mandate. They felt that the county was a little lukewarm on what they did and misses the point. So everyone I've talked to, they're still working it through, but enforcement's definitely a problem. And then I saw the video that you're mentioning. It's horrible. You know, I don't understand why people get upset with people who are just trying to enforce the rules. It's not a judgment that the hostess made. It was a request. It was posted. It's the law in New York. It's the law in LA. So for someone to attack somebody who's innocent, there should be enhanced penalties, quite honest.
Yeah, we've seen similar altercations even just with the mask mandate. So do you think that it will become the new norm for businesses to require proof of vaccination, or do you think that as the cases start dwindling down, they'll lift those requirements?
Well, I hope that I hope we're on the tail end of this. I'm hoping that having kids vaccinated will help. I mean, you're always going to have people who are deniers, anti-vaxxers, and you know, there's nothing you can do to change their minds. But once we get a handle on on the numbers. I'm hoping by January that we don't have to wear masks again. Although I will say my kids haven't been sick in 2 years now, wearing masks to school every day, so it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I think employers, businesses, it's just an extra administrative issue that they have to abide by, putting their employees in difficult situations too, as the video you mentioned, shows. So I think, as soon as that requirement could be lifted by LA County, and hopefully it's not too egregious for LA City, the ordinance comes out, I think that would be easier for the businesses going forward. But with that said, with the mandate, yeah, as long as, it keeps the businesses open, and I know a lot of businesses that are concerned about having to close again and won't be able to survive another closure. So, I think if there's some certainty that these mandates would prevent another shutdown, the businesses would probably be more willing to comply with that. But I think worst case scenario, we go through these mandates and then still face another shutdown. It's going to be devastating to businesses, and I don't think a lot of businesses are going to be able to survive that.
It's important to note that LA City is still drafting its ordinance, and LA County's ordinance goes into effect in October. But On Point's Vanessa Garcia visited a local restaurant that is already requiring proof of vaccination from its customers.
When diners arrive at Santa Monica restaurant Birdie G's, they must show proof of full vaccination or a negative test result before they're seated at their table. General Manager Brian Jacobs implemented this policy to keep his employees safe from the Delta variant and keep the restaurant open.
It sort of started with our internal vaccination policy, but then transitioned to a guest-facing vaccination policy as well. We ask for masks, obviously, when people are inside the space, up from their table and moving around, but it felt like the next necessary step.
The restaurant's inside policy shares that all guests can also present proof digitally, so there's no need to be carrying around a hard copy of your vaccine card.
We have a QR code on our host stand, so any guest who shows up who is vaccinated in the state of California who doesn't happen to have the proof of vaccination with them can scan the QR code and it'll pull up their vaccination records.
Jacobs says the response from diners has been overwhelmingly positive. He says the policy helps guests feel more comfortable when dining indoors.
And because it's not solely vaccination, a negative COVID test is also acceptable. It's not exclusionary to people who aren't able to get the vaccine. So I would be fully supportive of that as a step for LA County.
Jacobs says his employees feel safer knowing maskless diners are vaccinated too. Reporting from Santa Monica, I'm Vanessa Garcia.
Do you guys have any thoughts on that video? Or any thoughts or advice for restaurants that are already?
Well, Anthony's a lawyer, but I would say, and I'm kind of, but I would say that's a restaurant I'm more likely to go to. And, right now, if an employee gets sick, whether they get sick in working or not, it's still a workers' comp claim. So I think the restaurant's doing the right thing by protecting themselves and their customers and the employees.
I also think, the operator there, the restaurant operator there, it was a good example. Even without these ordinances, as you mentioned, are still going into effect and haven't been officially implemented yet on the county and city level. Private employers can develop these types of policies and implement what they want within their establishment, and they can mandate a vaccination policy voluntarily, like this operator did. Again, you need to have those reasonable accommodations for medical issues and a sincerely held religious belief. But notwithstanding that, they can mandate the vaccination already. And same with customers. They're free to implement what types of policies they want to have or don't have at this point. And, I'm curious to see how that plays out. And it's nice to see some operators opting to do that. It's nice to see some not doing that and see how that plays out and giving options to consumers. And if you feel more comfortable going to a restaurant like that, it's nice to have that option. And if you're not as concerned, it's nice to have the other option too. So, it's good that private employers still have that ability to make those decisions at this point.
Let's head back over to Christopher and get some of his thoughts about whether this type of mandate to show proof of vaccination should be coming from the government or if it should be up to the restaurant or business's discretion.
This is also a great question. And well, I can only speak to my thoughts and my ideas for this. And my thoughts are that public health requirements are most consistent if they come from the government agencies, public health itself. The ability of public health to manage and to enforce health and safety regulations really has been around for a long time. We just kind of forget it's there because you don't really see public health until there's a big issue. Regulations provided by the local or state government create uniformity across businesses. We could leave it up to companies, but then we're going to end up with kind of this patchwork of rules, and it differs from location or business to other location or other business. And the public just really finds this confusing. You have to try to figure out, do I need a mask here or not? Do I need vaccines here or not? And this inconsistency really makes a much less effective strategy for slowing the spread. So in addition, if we have clusters of unvaccinated individuals pushed to specific businesses because they have different requirements, this can actually push together susceptible individuals. So we don't always want to push everyone who's susceptible together because then we end up with these mini outbreaks. So we also may want to think about the employees in these businesses. The variation in regulation can affect employees as well, who may really have no say in what the company decides. So consistent regulation can allow them to go to a workplace where they feel safer. I would love to say that all businesses make decisions based on health and safety and their employees, but in reality, most businesses make decisions with the kind of the customers in mind and sometimes the bottom line in mind. It just depends. But there's a lot more information out there that are provided by the CDC, the California Department of Public Health, and the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, and they truly have good resources that provide all the latest information on infections and treatments, recommendations, and what businesses are or are not going to have specific regulations. And so I really encourage everyone, whether you're a business or an individual, to seek out information from these trusted sources.
Okay, did you guys have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it makes a great point about this patchwork of policies, and consistency is key. But to just a counterpoint on that, though, with all these different local governments, and we've got local government, city, county, state, and federal policies now, and it's led to a patchwork of different policies that employers and consumers have had to comply with, even from these mandates from the government. So I don't know if necessarily these types of local, hyper-local regulations are actually, helping that process at all. And but I'd like that point though, is it would be nice to have a consistent policy that employers could just know what they have to comply with so that they can comply, and consumers know what they have to deal with as well. And and I think we're getting a bit of a fatigue with COVID-19 at this point. I've seen it. I mean, I've just felt it myself with mask mandates changing. Now we've got the vaccine issue. And at a point, you're kind of almost just, I'm tired of this. I'm going to go out and enjoy my dinner. And I think, both employers, the private industry, and the government on state and local levels need to be aware of that too.
My last question as we wrap up, do you think once this mandate is in effect that the difficulties of enforcing it will outweigh the benefits? Stuart, we could start with you.
Well, the benefits are that more people get vaccinated or don't come out. And, we've seen that this is, while people vaccinated folks are still catching it, the hospitals are filled with unvaccinated. So for a safety measure, I think the benefits definitely are there. I've seen through social media and talking to people that people who weren't anti-vaxxers but were hesitant are getting vaccinated, and that is definitely a benefit. So, you know, as Anthony was saying earlier, uniformity is the key. Makes it easier for businesses. You don't have to worry if one business decides that they're going to have a vaccination requirement for everyone and another one decides that they're not, then you can lose employees, you can lose customers. But if everyone's doing the same thing, then it's fine. It also helps in terms of litigation. If it's a requirement, you can't be sued for it. If it's a choice, then you can. And so that saves money as well. So I think, you know, business owners are resilient, and you know, trying to enforce this is hard, and you know, there are going to be altercations, but I mean, there are people who are running up to people, grabbing masks off their faces, which is just crazy that that's even happening. So, you know, I think the benefits definitely outweigh the burden.
Did you have anything to add to that, Anthony?
No, and generally speaking, just, you know, I think some patience, you know, that's all I can really recommend to everybody, you know, patience with, you know, the employers, the frontline employees that you're dealing with. You know, it's just a tough time right now all around. And so, you know, when you go out and if somebody asks you to show proof of vaccination or mask, just have some understanding of where everybody's coming from. And yeah, and I think just be open-minded about that, and you know, avoid these situations like the video you mentioned with these confrontations and everything. And it's just a difficult time for everybody. And you know, hopefully we're at the tail end of this, as Stuart mentioned, and we can get through this and reopen and get the business back to usual going forward.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys for coming on the show. It was really insightful input from both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, and go Matadors.
You're watching On Point. We'll be right back.
I'm heading out, man. You want to ride?
No, I got my car, but I actually really need to go to the bathroom.
Dude, are you okay?
I am definitely buzzed.
Yeah.
I think I will take this, and I will take that ride home.
Thank you for watching On Point. You can hear us on KCSN 88.5 FM on Sunday mornings at 5:30. You can watch us on LA 36 and Santa Clarita Valley Television or on our YouTube channel. And you can follow us on social media at CSUN On Point. For all of us here at On Point, I'm Vanessa Garcia.